Continuing on in section 2.1, so now that we've established all of the vocab here, and there was a lot of it in this section right here, let's try to use it to solve a couple of the types of problems that you guys are likely to see on your homework. So we've got a diagram right here, and this one says that ray BD is bisecting angle ABE. So as you're just getting used to angles, kind of helpful to kind of look at the letters right here. Angle ABE starts here, goes here, and ends here. So angle ABE, let me highlight this thing, is going to be this angle that goes from A to B and then turns towards point E. So what we have highlighted there in blue is the big angle, ABE, and the vocab is important, guys. You got to get used to recognizing these vocabulary terms. Ray BD is bisecting that angle. And what does it mean to bisect something? We wrote that down earlier, to cut something into two congruent pieces. So when you hear the word bisector right here, that means that we are dealing with congruent angles. And which two angles then would be congruent? Well, ABE gets split by ray BD, so it's going to be angle ABD right here. That's going to be congruent to angle DBE right there. Now, I don't know that I took much time or effort into drawing this diagram accurately or not. Now, whether or not those two angles look congruent or not doesn't really matter. The text tells us that they are. That's what a bisector means. So the other good habit I would like you guys to get into right here is that when you have your diagram here, you obviously still have to read your directions carefully, but you've got to take the pieces of information that they give you, and I'd really recommend that you draw that information within the diagram. What do I mean by that? The measure of angle ABD, that's what that little M there means, is 4x plus 14 degrees. Draw that in the figure. ABD is this angle right here, so I'm going to put a 4x plus 14 degrees right there, kind of nestled in the interior of that angle. And then also the measure of angle DBE, which is this second angle here, is 8x minus 32 degrees. Now that's all the information they gave us, and they want us to find the measure of angle DBE. Well, first we're going to have to find x, and then we'll worry about how to find the measure of each particular angle. So the key here is the word bisector here, guys, which tells us that we've got congruent angles. That's why I put a tick mark right here and a tick mark right here. And what does the word congruent mean? Having equal measures. So our equation here, everybody, is that 4x plus 14 has to be equal to 8x minus 32. Because of the word bisector, that tells you that those two smaller angles are congruent, which means their measures are equal. All right, so let's solve this equation. 4x is smaller than 8x, so I'm going to subtract a 4x from both sides. And if all my variables are going right, I want all my constants to go left. So I'm also going to add a 32 on both sides here as well. 4x's are going to cancel on the left. 32s are going to cancel on the right. 14 plus 32 is 46. 8x minus 4x is 4x. And now we'll divide both sides by 4, and something kind of interesting is going to happen right here. When you go to take 46 divided by 4 in your calculator, we're going to end up, and this doesn't happen too often in the problems that I give you, with a decimal right there. We're going to end up with x is equal to, I'm pretty sure that is going to be 11.5. I suppose I could double check that right here by going with something like this. Just a scientific calculator is fine, and typing in 46 divided by 4. And yeah, you can see on the right there, guys, that gives us 11.5. So that's what we came up with for x. And in some problems, you'd be done there if it just said solve for x. But here they want us to go a step further, and the directions here say that we're supposed to find the measure of angle DBE. DBE, so we're talking about this angle right here. So we're going to go with the expression 8x minus 32 and put that 11.5 in for x. So I'll go ahead and start writing this out. The measure of angle DBE is equal to, that's going to be an 8, times our x value of 11.5 minus 32. So let me go back to my calculator right here, and I'll type in 8. Everywhere there was a variable, I like to use parentheses. 11 11, there we go, 0.5 was our x value, and then we had a minus 32 at the end of all that, and it looks like we ended up with 60 for the measure of that angle there. So let's go ahead and write that down, 60 degrees, and I'll box that up. That should be the answer to this problem. But it's never a bad idea, guys, especially if this was a quiz or a test, to make sure you got this right. Let's find the measure of angle ABD right next to that, 4x plus 14. Now, if we've done this right, and if we understand what the word bisect means, which is to give us congruent angles, this answer had better be 60 as well. So 4x plus 14. We've got a 4. Our x value, we believe, is 11.5. So there's your 4x and then a plus 14, and we'll hit enter there. Yep, sure enough, that one was 60 degrees as well. So now I feel really confident about my answer that I came up with right here. Hey, and just for fun, how about the measure of this angle right here? Well, what I'm hoping you guys noticed here is that we've got ray BA going to the left and BC going to the right. Those are opposite rays. And guys, you are allowed to assume that something that looks like a straight line is a straight line. And what that tells us here, guys, with that straight line is that we have a big half circle right over there that kind of arcs from A all the way to C. That means that these three angles together have to add up to, hopefully we know it, guys, 180 degrees. The 60 and 60 that we know add up to 120, and 180 minus that 120 is going to leave us with 60 degrees here as well. So I actually don't love this problem here, guys, the way it worked out, because I don't want you to think that this will always be the case. But kind of by a coincidence right here, we ended up with three angles here that were all congruent to each other. That absolutely doesn't have to be the case. Like, for example, this could have been 70. This angle here could have been 70. Those two would add up to 140, and that would leave 40 degrees over here to get you to the 180. So don't think that always has to be the case, but it did work out that way this time in this example that I took out of the textbook. All right, two more examples I want to work with you here, guys. These two are both faster than the one that we just did. First one right here, next one, solve for x. So not much text in the diagram, and here's what we've got. Now, as you guys are doing your homework, you're going to come across a problem here and there that you don't quite know what to do with, and the best thing I can tell you is look back in your notes and try to find a diagram that looks similar to the problem that we're working on. So I'm going to kind of remember what this one looks like, and I don't really see any help there, nothing there, but wait a minute, this looks like what we were just dealing with in this problem right over here. I kind of have a straight line with another ray sticking out of it. This is what we call a linear pair. Two angles that are adjacent and basically makes a straight line on the bottom. And then this concept right here is probably what I need to solve this problem. Angles that form a linear pair must add up to 180 degrees. Well, sure enough, right here, guys, we have a straight line down here on the bottom, which means these two angles form a linear pair. And back to it one more time, angles that form a linear pair must add up to 180 degrees. So that's what my equation is going to be. We're going to take 3x plus 1, and we're going to add that to a 9x minus 13, and the sum of the measures of those two angles has to be 180 degrees because we're dealing with a straight line right there. Let's combine some like terms, guys. 3x and 9x are going to combine to make a 12x. A positive 1 and a negative 13 will make negative 12 when we put them together. That's going to equal your 180. We're going to add a 12 now on both sides. Those 12s will cancel, and we'll get a 12x is equal to, I believe that is 192, and then we'll divide both sides by 12 here, and I'm pretty sure that's going to get us x is equal to 16. I suppose I should double check that. So here we go, 192, and we were dividing that by 12. Gotcha. And right there we end up with 16. Okay, so yeah, we were right about that. And again, always go back and check your directions when you think you're done. The directions just said solve for x, which we've done, so it looks like we're finished with this problem. But especially on a quiz or a test, you guys, it's always a good idea to check your answer. I'm going to find the value of this angle right here, 3x plus 1. So this is going to be a 3 times an x value that I believe is 16 now. So 3x plus 1, and that gets us 49 degrees. Now, I really have no way of knowing if that answer is correct or not yet, but I do know that it's at least realistic. If this answer came out to be negative, for example, we would know that that's wrong. An angle measure can never be negative. And if it ended up being a huge number, like 239, that would be way too big. So 49 is at least reasonable. But I don't know that it's right until I check this angle over here, 9x minus 13. So that's going to be a 9 times an x value we said of 16. So there's your 9x. And then a minus 13 at the end of that got us 131 degrees for the measure of this angle. Now again, I think that's realistic, but I don't really know that it's correct until I start to think about how these two angles here relate to one another. And I'm hoping you guys notice it. 49 and 131. Well, if you don't, let me show you right here real quick. If you take the 49 and add the 131 to that, that gets you a total then of 180 degrees, which is exactly what we thought should be the case. Those two angles form a linear pair, and therefore their measures have to add up to 180. So always a good idea to check yourself before you move on from a problem. Last one we're going to do here, number 9, and again, we're just solving for x. Now, what I'm hoping you guys notice, I'm sure you do, is that this problem looks different from the one that we just did. So if I'm not quite sure how to handle this, let's go back in our notes and let's look for a diagram that looks similar. Kind of this big X here formed by two intersecting lines. No help here, no help here. Vertical angles, I think, are what we're dealing with here, guys. Two non-adjacent angles formed by two intersecting lines. And I believe that's what's going on here. Two intersecting lines, and we've got one angle here on the left. Now, this angle is adjacent to that 37 minus 3x. So is this angle right here, but this angle is non-adjacent. So these are my vertical angles here. And let's go back to what we wrote there at the bottom of that page. Read it with me, guys. Vertical angles must always be congruent. And what does congruent mean? Having equal measures. So here's our equation now, guys. The 37 minus 3x has to be equal to a 12 minus 8x. Now, solving this equation, you have options and you can do a lot of different things, but my recommendation is always this. Deal with your variable terms first, which are the negative 3x on the left and the negative 8x on the right, and always move the smaller term to the bigger term. So ask yourself now, and be careful, which term is actually smaller? Negative 3x or negative 8x? Negative 8 is the smaller number. Sure, 8 is bigger than 3, but we're talking negatives here, guys. Negative 8 is less than negative 3. So I'm going to add an 8x on both sides of the equation. And if I'm bringing all my variables to the left, I want all my constants to go to the right, so I'm going to subtract a 37 from each side. Let me draw a line right here. The 37s on the left cancel. The 8x's on the right cancel. Oops. And now here we go. Let's add some things up. Negative 3x plus 8x is going to give us a 5x, and 12 minus 37 is going to be negative 25. Now we'll divide both sides here by 5, and we'll get x is equal to negative 5. Once more, the directions just say solve for x, so I think I'm done, but it's always a good idea to plug that back into your calculator. And I wanted to take advantage of this opportunity here, guys, just to remind you how to do this right. 37 minus 3x. We type that into the calculator all in one line right here, guys, okay? So it was 37 minus 3, and then our x value we believe is negative. Did I just use the minus sign here? Yeah, negative 5 right there. Close that parenthesis and hit enter, and we came up with 52 degrees for the measure of this angle on the left. Now again, I don't know that that's right, but it's at least realistic. It's bigger than 0. It's less than, say, 180 degrees, so I feel okay about that, but now we check it here. 12 minus 8x. So that's a 12 minus 8, and then in parentheses, our x value we think is negative 5, so we'll hit enter, and sure enough, we got 52 again. So 52 degrees right there. Now I feel pretty good about this answer, because those two vertical angles have to be congruent, according to what we wrote down right here, and we wouldn't lie to you guys. And sure enough, those angles came out to have the same measure. Just for fun, if you wanted to find the measure of this angle right here, you have a linear pair right there, guys. They have to add up to 180. So if we did 180 minus 52, that would get you 128, I believe. That would be the measure of this angle right here. And right below that is an angle that's a vertical angle with this guy. So that would have to be 128 as well. And the last thing I'll point out, if you were going to go to your calculator and add up the measure of all four angles right here, okay, 52 and 128, let's do that. So 52, I didn't get my 2 in there. Let's try that again. 52 plus a 128, plus there was another 52, plus another 128, that should get us a nice round number of 360 degrees, which of course is what you get when you add all four angles together, because together that all makes a complete circle. So really, guys, get in the habit of, once you have solved for x, plug that number back in everywhere you can and make sure that everything makes sense. All right, guys, that's a wrap on section 2.1, long section of notes. So let's give that homework a try. Good luck, everybody, and let us know when you have questions.